And the thing that kind of interested me the most about the technology and the blockchain technology and the cryptocurrency space is that there isn't a very clear-cut path of what these products are and what they represent and how they fall into the current legal structure. So for me, I was like, wow, this is awesome. And it's probably, potentially one of the handful of times that as a lawyer, you get to be involved in hopefully a world-changing new technology and innovation. So that's what really attracted me to focus in on the area. And also the beauty of running my own business was that I got to choose what I wanted to do, and that was it.
That is Brenda Saveluc, and this is episode 20 of the Blockchain Pro podcast. Hello and welcome to episode 20 of the Blockchain Pro podcast. I'm Adriana and today's guest is Brenda Saveluc.
We're rolling, la 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 la, and we're dancing.
Dancing? Oh yeah.
Hi Brenda.
Hi Adriana.
How are you doing today?
I am going great. How are you?
I'm good.
Excellent.
Yes.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, thank you for being here. I'm very excited. Been trying to nail this down for a while now.
I know, I'm sorry.
That's alright. We had a few false starts. Now we're here.
But we got there eventually.
Exactly.
It's a great honor. I come after a long list of really cool people that you've had on the podcast, so I'm very flattered to be invited.
Yeah, you do have to be cool to be on this podcast.
It's true.
You're on the list.
Yes.
Officially now.
Life box ticked. Done.
So let's go back in time and tell me about how did you decide to become a lawyer?
How I decided to, what on earth possessed me to become a lawyer? That's a really good question. So I guess I started out life in accounting. I was actually at PwC for 3.5 years. And that was an awesome experience, and it got me exposed to lots of clients in the financial services industry. I did a lot of work with Westpac and some property funds. But I was sort of nearing the end of my degree, and I thought that I might as well give this whole law thing a go. I'd actually just picked law kind of a bit on a whim, to be completely honest with you. I always thought that I'd be an accountant for the rest of my life, but I ended up getting good enough marks at high school, and I was like, oh yeah, all right, just tack a law degree on. Didn't really think too much about it. And then when I was nearing the end of my law degree, I decided to work at a really small boutique firm that kind of did everything from property conveyancing to small scale capital raisings, to, like wills and estates, like literally everything under the sun, we did it. And that little law firm was also involved with a capital advisory business. So they were setting up some funds and doing some interesting stuff in the financial services space. And I decided that I really enjoyed it. And I loved the problem solving, I guess, that the legal industry and the legal career presented me with. And I thought, hey, why not? I can do this. I really found that the kind of like logical side of the law really appealed to me, that there's pretty much a formula for, resolving any problem that you might come up with. Like, oh crap, I have this thing that happened and what do I do now? So it kind of inspired that side of my mind, and I really enjoy solving people's problems or trying to anyway. So yeah, that's kind of how I got into the law. And then I guess a couple of years ago I decided that I wanted to set up my own law firm, and I did, BlackGold Legal, and it's been a wild ride ever since.
How was that transition from working with someone else and building your own business? I think that's a part of the journey that's very tough, and sometimes it's sort of people stay away because they are afraid of doing that. So how did that work out for you?
I totally agree. I don't think that I've ever worked harder in my life than I have since starting the business. And I definitely don't think that it's easy by any stretch of the imagination, but my God, it's freaking cool. And I have a lot of fun doing it. To be honest with you, I sort of just wasn't really attracted by the law firm model and kind of staying in that career path. And it took a lot of convincing, I guess, both myself and kind of other external parties, giving me a gentle nudge towards going out on my own. My partner, Fred Sylvester, had a lot to do with that, and it was actually really funny. And I've passed this story on to anyone who is kind of looking to, you know, either set up their own business or to do their own side project. He challenged me to just make $100, not through my, you know, traditional law job. And I thought, oh, okay, that's interesting. How do I do that? And I just ended up by putting a profile up on Upwork of literally anything, like literally everything that I could do. Things from, you know, proofreading, writing articles, translating, all of my skills that I could possibly think of. And I ended up winning a couple of like really small jobs, and I made $100. I made more than $100, and I was like, well, okay, I can do it.
Baby steps.
Really like tiny baby steps. But it sort of just opened up this whole, you know, side of making money and, you know, entrepreneurial world that I'd sort of looked at from afar going, oh, that looks kind of interesting and that looks fun, but it's by no stretch of the imagination an easy path. And I think that it's been, I guess, a personal challenge to myself to kind of, you know, get through a lot of limiting mindsets. And especially as a lawyer, you know, we're taught to look at risk and be very extraordinarily risk averse. And so, you know, like I always see the challenges and the difficulties in a situation of like, oh, what happens when this happens? Or, oh, what happens if that happens? And so I definitely went through a lot of kind of back and forth, and I still do, you know, to this day. But I think that kind of challenge of pushing myself and kind of persisting towards the goal of, you know, running my own business, hiring a great team of awesome people, having really cool clients, that's what I want to do essentially day in, day out, every day.
When did you hire your first, you know, team member? How was that experience?
Yeah, it was really nerve-wracking, to be totally honest with you. And for a long time I didn't. I think definitely for the first maybe year, possibly even 18 months, I didn't hire anyone because I thought I could do it all myself. And obviously I couldn't. I guess it's a good problem to kind of have too much work on. But I got to a stage and I realized, well, look, either I can, you know, essentially just do contracting, which was essentially what I was doing, right? Or I can actually try and build a business out of this thing that doesn't just rely on me and doing everything on my own. And the first person that I hired was actually my awesome paralegal who's still with me to this day, Sagand. And she, I think I just literally just put a job ad up at the unis saying, come and do paralegal stuff. And, you know, I was doing work with a lot of tech clients and some blockchain tech clients, and she was really into it, and we totally clicked. But we all work remotely, so we don't see each other except for maybe, you know, our weekly catch up call that we might have. But Sagan now works in Germany. Another lawyer that works for me works in Singapore, and I've just hired someone up in the Gold Coast as well. So it's awesome, and we essentially all just have, you know, we all have our own other projects and our own other things that we're into. But yeah, I guess when the work needs to be done, we'll kind of band together and do it. So
BlackGold is truly an international law practice.
It is. Technically, you're right, I think. Yeah.
So, and you mentioned that you do a lot of work in the tech industry in blockchain. So how did you discover blockchain?
Well, the rabbit hole down the blockchain story. I guess everyone's got their kind of own version of I think, seeing blockchain tech in action the very first time. And I had sort of heard, you know, murmurs about this Bitcoin thing, you know, maybe say 5 or 6 years ago. But until I sort of went out on my own, I hadn't really taken a deep dive into it. And so when I was, you know, setting up the firm, I you know, was thinking, well, what kind of clients do I want, and what do I want to do? Who am I going to pitch to? What sort of work am I interested in? And I guess I come from like a very, you know, typical traditional mergers and acquisitions, corporate law background, but I wanted to do something that was kind of out there a little bit. And the first time that I saw, blockchain tech in action was, seeing a friend transfer some money to a blockchain wallet, and a Bitcoin wallet rather, and it took all of 30 seconds and the funds were in there and it worked and it was seamless and it was awesome. I guess I say seamless, I hadn't seen all the, the background before it of going and buying the Bitcoin and all that sort of stuff, but it worked and it was a payment and it was really cool. And the thing that kind of interested me the most about the technology and the blockchain technology and the cryptocurrency space is that there isn't a very clear-cut path of what these products are and what they represent and how they fall into the current legal structure. So for me, I was like, wow, this is awesome. And it's probably, potentially one of the handful of times that as a lawyer, you get to be involved in hopefully a world-changing new technology and innovation. So that's what really attracted me to focus in on the area. And also the beauty of running my own business was that I got to choose what I wanted to do. And that was it. I was like, yep, I'm going to find out how this works. I don't really know a lot about it. But, thankfully there's lots of awesome people in the blockchain tech community like yourself. And there's a whole range of people that are really, happy and willing to share their knowledge and what they know about the industry. And so I literally just got started by just going to meetups, talking with people that have either traded cryptocurrencies or that were setting up blockchain tech-based businesses, and really literally just starting from scratch and doing a lot of reading and watching a lot of videos and watching, listening to podcasts and just taking in the massive material that is out there. So.
Yeah, I think for myself, one of the things that drew me into it as well was this. I could see that Bitcoin started a movement that is going to change a lot of things in how we do.
Agreed.
Or we deal with the financial industry.
Yep.
Or just our daily lives, really. And I could see that that's where Bitcoin was going to take us, and so far I haven't really been disappointed.
Yeah, it's definitely been, it's definitely not a clear-cut path either. So, I know that there's a lot of people that, believe that Bitcoin and blockchain is going to be the future, but we're not quite there yet. I fundamentally believe that it is, but I can't see, what on earth the industry is going to look like in 5 or 10 years' time. But I've had enough people that, are a lot smarter than me, that have a lot more experience than me, that have said, you should look into this because this is going to change the world. And, people say that it feels just like the start of the internet. And that kind of thing I think only comes around maybe a handful of times in your life. So I'm really excited.
Me too. Okay, so how do you explain blockchain or crypto to those in your life that are not very tech savvy? Have you had to do that yet?
Yeah, I have. I definitely have. And I think very similarly to a lot of people that are involved in the industry in somehow or another, I think a lot of those same kinds of questions come up of, well, is this actually all a Ponzi scheme? Is it just to launder money? Are you buying Bitcoin and Ethereum just to buy drugs? And, that last question is no. But, I've definitely had to try and explain, well, this is essentially to me, cryptocurrency at the moment essentially just represents a digital currency. And that's how I think that a lot of people think of it right now. I know that there's a lot of, fine intricacies and a lot more detail that you can go into depending on what, say, a token does or a particular smart contract does. But I think at its base, it's essentially, and the way that I try to explain it to, people that aren't perhaps that tech savvy, it's essentially a decentralized currency is the way that I think about it. But that being said, you can do a lot of really cool other techie stuff that goes along with it. But I enjoy the fact that a lot of the blockchain-based technologies are essentially trying to cut out middlemen, as you said, in the financial services industry, or whether that be in the property industry, payments, even things like identification, verification, all that type of stuff. So that's kind of how I try and angle it to people that aren't really involved in the space. It's essentially trying to cut out the middlemen, and it's a trust-based system of code in which you can rely on the code because it works, right? And it's computers essentially going 1001100000 and solving calculations to hopefully get people who don't trust each other to trust each other.
Or to transact without having to trust each other.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so when Ethereum came along with their smart contracts platform, there was this big talk about, Ethereum's going to end the job of lawyers.
I hope so. That'd be awesome.
So how do you go about digesting that and making sure that you can still be relevant if Ethereum true goal is to really end the job of lawyers?
I would love to say that. I think it'd be so fascinating to not have any lawyers. I think a lot of people would be super happy. But
because that isn't really true, right?
No, exactly. And I think that, the first problem even comes with the taxonomy that we use to describe what it is. It's a smart contract. And just using the word contract in that language makes it sound like it's a legally binding agreement, like a property contract or like a business sale contract. And I don't think that smart contracts are real contracts. They can be and they might be, but a lot of them aren't necessarily, legally binding. I understand what it is that a smart contract is trying to do in terms of literally just making code law. And I think it's going to be great for the legal industry if smart contracts end up taking off and hopefully, allowing people to essentially contract between themselves and write their own agreements. I think technologies that make it easier for people to interact with each other and make it more understandable is always a good thing. That being said, I don't think that it's possible to codify every single possibility. And that is kind of what a contract tries to do. The things that I look at every day is lawyers kind of getting together and writing big fancy words to essentially say, kind of no matter what happens, this is what we'll do. But unfortunately, the world doesn't always work like that. And it's not always as neat as falling into a category or an event and saying, okay, well, if X happens, then I should do Y. Or something is broken down or you haven't paid me. But there's an infinite number of possibilities of things that can happen, right? The world's unpredictable. And so I think that while we can do our best, and we should do our best to codify simple scenarios, so say, for example, just like under a normal contract, if I'm buying a widget from you, Adriana, and I don't pay you the money that I owe you under the contract, then you can sue me. Sure, that totally, absolutely makes sense to just put it in code, and it can be represented either through words like we normally do in a contract, or it can be represented by code that executes that function, whatever it might be. But there's actually a whole, different other scenario and list of things that could possibly happen during my purchase of that thing from you. And I think that's where the legal industry and lawyers should be focused on actually adding value to the things that matter, and where legal expertise is valued isn't on those really simple events. Nearly automatic events, exactly. It's actually in the grey areas that surround all of that stuff. And so while I think a technology like smart contracts could actually do a lot in terms of helping lawyers cut out a lot of the, I'd say lower, the work, I guess, that doesn't require such a high level of expertise. I think it's actually going to be a facilitator in terms of legal work. And I look forward to, not having to have, junior lawyers spending hours, for instance, redacting documents or, doing title searches or doing those menial tasks that don't necessarily add value to a relationship or to a contract. But I also don't think that a smart contract or any technology for that matter can possibly cover every single instance of life, because it's I guess what we're talking about at the end of the day is people and businesses contracting with each other, and
that's much more
they're unpredictable
than automation. Yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, I think there's definitely an opportunity there, and I definitely encourage any, I guess automation in the legal industry has been a hot topic, I guess, for many years now, and there's lots of really cool tech that is, coming out and that has been out for a little while that is hopefully helping lawyers do their jobs. But I think it really presents an opportunity, especially for junior lawyers or new entrants into the industry, to I guess see how they can leverage and use their skills using that particular technology or things that make their jobs easier, really, at the end of the day.
Yeah, a lot of students need to learn the code.
I totally agree.
If you're in school and you're hearing this, take this advice on board.
Definitely. And I think even just I don't think it's necessary, to necessarily become a fantastic coder and to become a developer instead of being a lawyer. But I think knowing how the logic works and knowing how a function executes, or knowing how to write something in a code language, or becoming familiar with the language around software and technology is invaluable. Most of my clients, if not all of my clients, have something to do with technology. And for instance, I need to know what an API is. I need to know what kind of intellectual property we're looking at. I need to know, things that are maybe not necessarily legal per se, but that go really to the core of the industry that most of my clients operate in. So yeah, if you're at school and you're thinking about what to do next for a law degree, definitely take a look at coding.
This is awesome advice. So apart from the coding, what other advice do you have for anyone that, coming to a new career or not, that is hearing about blockchain and wants to learn more?
Who wants to learn more? I think the best that you can do is, number one, just to dive into plenty of material. And number two is to talk to people that you admire and that are way smarter than you, to learn from them. To the first point, I guess, in terms of reading lots of material, there is so much out there. Like, I personally find YouTube clips are really helpful when I'm trying to learn about, say, a new token or a new blockchain that is maybe coming out. And there's lots of material out there. That being said, I think it's important to just sort of take things a little bit with a grain of salt, because there is a lot of material out there. Not all of it is 100% accurate or necessarily correct. But nonetheless, having kind of a skeptical hat on at the same time as reading what is out there, I think is a really good approach. I think that it's sort of interesting to see what has happened now with a lot of the blockchain tech projects that were hyping themselves up around 2017, start of 2018. And there was lots of white papers out there circulating that kind of looked similar, I guess, to an extent, that were essentially saying, wow, look at this life-changing, and well, we're going to do all this cool techie stuff. And now a lot of those projects, I'm not sure whether they've delivered on what they might have promised. But that being said, I think there's also a lot of smart people out there. And when I look at the industry and I see bigger players, enterprise players such as IBM, CBA, investing time and money into a technology, I'm not necessarily saying that they, that's always purposely directed towards that, but when they're looking at it seriously, I think it's definitely a good pointer that things could be heading in that direction. I guess to the second point of speaking to really smart people, go to a bunch of the meetups. Adriana, you organise a lot of really kick-ass, cool meetups. You have one on, I guess, is it almost every week? They're pretty regular.
The Bitcoin Sydney one used to be every week. Sometimes during summer, when people are more inclined to go to the pub and have a beer, we have them weekly.
But there's definitely lots of different groups out there, and
absolutely
and lots of opportunities. And what's really cool is that they're all over the world as well.
No matter where you are,
Exactly.
there's always a meetup near you.
Exactly. And I was kind of hesitant at first. I'm like, I don't know about like going into a room full of complete strangers, and I'm going to feel a bit weird about it. But I found that like people in the blockchain tech industry are generally really cool. Like, not everyone, sure, but they're generally people there that are genuinely interested in the technology, and more often than not willing to share their knowledge and interest. And it's awesome.
Yeah, I've been to Bitcoin specifically meetups and some blockchain meetups all over the world, and there's always, usually the organizers are the ones that you
Agreed.
can just, they're going to be great people. They're outgoing. They
Yeah.
want to share their story and their interests, and it's really always a lovely experience.
It really is. It really is. And I do have to, do a massive shout out to you and to people like yourself that spend the time and effort doing that, because, it's not like it's often those intangible, networking and relationship building things that can have some really, really cool outcomes.
For the love of technology.
For the love of the technology. I love it. But it takes a lot of work, so kudos to you and to all the other meetup and community organisers out there.
Yes, guys, great job. I'm patting myself on the back here.
So you should.
Oh, I think that's a great note to end on.
Awesome.
And we just hit the 25-minute mark. Woo. Let's wrap up. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Adriana.
And that was the always lovely and very smart Brenda Saveluc. You can get in touch with Brenda via her website, BlackGoldLegal.com. BlackGoldLegal.com. As usual, you can reach me on the web socials. I'm Abellotti on Twitter and Instagram. And you can also connect with the podcast channels on both Twitter and Instagram, Blockchain PP. Our website is blockchainpropodcast.com, and you can find all the episodes and channels there. If you like this episode, please share it or leave us a review. When that happens, it really makes my day. And it makes you awesome. That's all for now. Have a good one, and I will see you at the next block.